Hi there. This is Bob with One Stop Mouse. Thank you for joining me tonight for a very cool segment for Dean and the Live Place and our collective of live streamers, of family-friendly live streamers at the Live Place. You've joined One Stop Mouse, and we are part of their movie marathon at the Live Place. These things are going on every day this week, a few times a day, various channels. Lots of friends of mine are doing movie vlogs, talking about movie things. Ours is the most classic scenes in cinema history. Now, that's not from some list or the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences or anything. That's from me, Bob from One Stop Mouse. And on the app that I'm using, the free version of the StreamYard app that I'm using, I was doing a whole bunch of graphics that you'll see up behind me on the green screen in a minute. Hey, Disinfinity, how are you? Thank you for joining me. I'm sorry I didn't get back to you. I was working on these graphics for a while, and then I found out I was just telling the audience that on this free version of the app, you can only upload 20 images to use on the green screen. So I was like, because I probably would have had like 40 or something. But I have a big mouth. I'll probably be able to do that. And then I'll just read right off this scribble sheet right here. And I'll just, without having images behind me, if I need to fill time, I could talk about movies forever. I actually worked in the film industry for a while, way back when, and got a degree in cinema. I was, I've been in this for a long, long time. And then I went away from it, did all kinds of things. And then I'm back at social media, but some of my things, if you look at them, it's like my old days are coming back. Disinfinity, oh, that's annoying, but I'm sure the ones that you have will be great. Thank you. Dreamer's Empire, hey, Bob. I could talk movies for a long time. Well, Dean, you've come to the right place. So could I. So welcome. Dean at Dreamer's Empire. He is the man who has put together this great collective of live streamers at the Live Place, through which we are going right now as well as our channel One Stop Mouse as part of their movie marathon week. Thank you, Dean, very much for putting this together for us. I think it's been a blast just watching other people, and I think this is going to be a blast too. Disinfinity, we are guessing you were a fan of The Great Movie Ride. Yes, I was okay, don't get me started. I was a fan of The Great Movie Ride, of course, because some of those movies, a couple of them, Singing in the Rain, The Wizard of Oz, a few of those that were on that ride are in this list, and you'll see images of those in just a minute. But I also like Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. You can't have everything. You can't, have your cake and eat it too, or whatever the saying is. But I wish we could have both. And The Great Movie Ride, for you guys that have been fans of The Great Movie Ride for a long time, you know that The Great Movie Ride was starting to get run down and not taken care of, and it was probably on its way out. And years back when I, first saw it, or even 10 years ago, they used to have a lot more live cast members interacting with the mannequins and everything in that ride. It was amazing. Yeah, I know. I actually feel that way too. Now that I really think of it, I wish The Great Movie Ride was like in some other Disney park that I could go and visit and experience, because it's one of those rides where once you've experienced it once, I don't necessarily know that, I have to go on it every time I go to Hollywood Studios. But The Great Movie Ride, just so nostalgic. And that's something, seeing attractions like that and seeing live performances like Yeehaw Bob and stuff going, that nostalgia, especially for us vintage guys, right, Dean? People who have been around for a little longer, it lets you sink it to nostalgia and memories and be a kid. Of course, if you're real young, you're not going to know what you're missing anymore, but us older folks do. Yes, we're glad they did something and replaced it. Something awesome and replaced it. It's good. It's good. All right, so... All right. Okay, so I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah, I'm working on something. Hey, James Ryan. Actually, James Ryan's not going to get on here. He is an amazing moderator, and I needed to ask him a question. James Ryan moderates for just about every other YouTube channel out there that you've ever seen, and he really likes my hat, and he makes me crack up. He is actually on the way to Disney, probably just about now. He's going to the airport, so I'll ask him this in person. Let's see. Disinfinity, in my opinion, they should have built a new building for Runaway Railway, but that would have taken years. Yeah, I agree. I was actually, every time somebody asked me about that, that's what I said. Dean, vintage, just been a true, hard to have everything. All right, so guys, as part of the movie marathon, and before I forget, because I always forget everything, because I'm like the absent-minded professor from Flubber, I am Jones, or Bob, with One Stop Mouse. You are watching this through the movie marathon event that's going on with the Live Place for family-friendly live streams. Please go to the Live Place and check that out. And if you have not subscribed to One Stop Mouse, please do so. Hit that like button, bam, 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 because that really helps out the channel. And also tap on that notifications bell icon, because things are happening with Disney so fast and furious lately. The news, the layoffs, the attractions, the days that they're increasing times at the parks, which are on and off. Things change so much, in other words, that I just do impromptu, unscheduled news type streams. And if you have hit that notification bell, you'll get a thing that lets you know, oh, Bob's on at 10 o'clock and something here says, uh-oh, I better check this out. Or something says, this is great, Christmas. So do that, please. Have I been on Runaway Railway yet? I don't know if you're talking to Dean at Tree Numbers Empire or me. I actually, I'm one of the laid off cast members, and my wife and I actually went on a cast preview a few days before the general public, back when that opened up. I think that was in February of this year, 2020. So, all right. So, without further ado, and without screaming into the mic anymore, so I overmodulate it any more than I usually do, let's go to, I'm not going to go in order of any year, and this is my personal list, and this is not from movies. Some of them are for the whole movie, but it's really for scenes, just scenes that just, whoa, you know. A lot of people know these scenes even if they've never even seen the movie before, because they've heard lines from the scenes and everything. So I'm just going to kind of skip all over the place in terms of years, and we'll talk about this. And I know that we're vintage, Dean, and you're going to like some of the ones that I like, I'm sure. So let's see here. All right. This is actually my favorite Western. Well, I don't know if it's my favorite Western of all time, but it certainly ranks up there. And I'm one of those people that believes that someone will say, well, what type of music do you like? what type of movies do you like? What type of I like to think that I'm a thinker, in the same way with politics, I don't vote by party. I try to vote for ideas. I think that every art form, music, movies, whatever, they all have a measure of craftsmanship where even if it's a horror movie and I'm not into that, or a Western and I'm not into that, there will be some that stand out because they're so well crafted. So this is one of the first probably 6 or 7 movies that Clint Eastwood directed himself back in 1976. And he had done those spaghetti westerns in Italy that had made him real popular. And then he had done the Dirty Harry movies and everything. And then people didn't know what to think in 1976 when he directed another western and called The Outlaw Josie Wales, and why he did it. And there was a very important reason to it. If any of you have ever seen it, it's an awesome film with lots of memorable lines. If you have not seen The Outlaw Josie Wales, and you like some of the later ones that Clint Eastwood did, like Pale Rider, that are more current than 1976, they are sort of, it's as if he was refining what he did with Josie Wales in a sense and updating it for political statements. But this is awesome. This film basically, it's based on a lot of iconic storytelling type stuff. One of them is Edgar Rice Burroughs' John Carter, that movie that flopped that Disney put out recently and is turning into a cult classic, like Blade Runner originally was a flop and is becoming a cult classic. Story of, just like John Carter, a story of a man who is peace-loving, doesn't want it to get into the war that's going on around him. He's just a farmer. In the South, a tragic thing happens where his young son and wife are killed, and he's so full of hate and loathing and vengeance that even though he has this this gun that he has wrapped in canvas and buried so his little kid couldn't get to it, he goes out and practices and then joins up with a band of Southern vigilantes that aren't going to surrender to the North, and they're really mad because every time farmers like themselves surrender to the North, they end up getting shot right after they sign an armistice paper. So anyway, that's sort of the setup, but he is so wicked, like a rattlesnake, and so fast. And so if you haven't seen this, you got it. There's epic scenes. There's one that's not this scene, and it's basically is this scene where he goes into this little store, and this young Indian woman is working for the shopkeeper, and these two big bruisers are taking advantage of this young Indian woman. And in comes Josie Wales, and they recognize him because there's big bounties put out for him all over the place. And the two guys have 4 guns drawn on him. These old-fashioned Civil War guns, like these pistols that Clint Eastwood has in his hands. Right over, I would be the worst weatherman on earth, and you can see they're like cannons, and they ask him to take them out real slowly and hand them out by the butt ends to them, by the handles, and he, in a flash, he whips them both around and he shoots both of the guys. Basically, what this is, it's Clint Eastwood doing an anti-war message. This is a Vietnam War era film, and it's hidden in being a Western, but not hidden so much that there are a lot of classic lines in there. A bounty hunter comes after him. that could have walked away but doesn't, and he says, he says, well, I had to come back. I couldn't just wimp out and just leave. And he says, dying's not a living, boy. Lots and lots of things like that. He comes to an agreement, a peace with the Indians who are at war with with just about everyone else but him, because he lives on the land by himself, and he doesn't BS. He speaks straight. So anyway, if you get to see this film, and if you don't, I don't know why you wouldn't. Even if you hate Westerns, I swear, even if you hate, my wife hates Westerns, okay? She hates them. This is different. This is not, don't even put this in the column, the genre of Western. So this scene, I'm not capable of running video during the stream. I will soon, but so I just have stills. This scene is called, that I'm pointing out, that you'll see if you see this film, it's called Hell's Come to Breakfast. So the deal is, as he is taking out the bad guys before they take out him, even though he wants to be by himself and he's gruff and everything else, he's this guy, he's Clint Eastwood, as you would think, with a heart of gold. And before you know it, he has this whole caravan of people that he's taking care of and taking under his wing. Chief Dan George, famous older Indian from back then in the 70s and 80s. He's got him. He's got a young Indian woman. And basically, Chief Dan George and the younger Indian woman have been taken captive by these guys, these criminals that are going to sell them as slaves to the Comanche Indians. And along with them is his future real-life wife, Sandra Locke, and her mom. And as they're about right before they're going to sell her, they basically are going to do all kinds of bad things to these people that Josie cares about and the ones he will care about. And all of a sudden he shows up on a ridge with his rifle up, with a flag, like a truce flag. And as he's doing that, Chief Dan George, who's gotten to know him and gotten to know his spirit, is down there, crouched down because he doesn't know what's going on, and he sees that it's Josie Whale up on the ridge, and he kind of narrates what he's going to do. He's got the sun at his back, so he should have an advantage. And all these other people are like, "What's happening? What's happening?" And he goes, "Just stay down low. Hell's come to breakfast." Because literally, if you guys like The Mandalorian, do you guys like The Mandalorian? Disinfinity, Dreamy's Empire? Okay, guess what? The Mandalorian, everybody says it's based on spaghetti westerns. Nope, it's not. If you watch The Outlaw Josie Wales, from like how he walks into that scene where he saves that woman and flips his pistols and all kinds of stuff, and he walks in the doorway, it's just like when The Mandalorian went into that bar. There's so many. When you see that, you're going to go, oh, this is The Outlaw Josie Wales in Star Wars. Very, very much. Anyway, the Hell's Come to Breakfast scene is great because it points out how it's narrated by Chief Dan George, and you'll like it. It's very hard to say. Hey, Wild Bud Fox, how are you? Thanks for joining us. If you haven't checked out The Outlaw Josie Wales, especially the Hell's Come to Breakfast scene, in this movie marathon for the Live Place, please check out this film, because you will see real quick. If you like The Mandalorian on Disney Plus, you're going to love this film. And this film came out in 1976. So they have generally, Jon Favreau and those have been saying, well, this is based on spaghetti westerns. Well, guess who Mr. Spaghetti Western is, of all people? Clint Eastwood, of course. That's how he got famous. And this movie in particular, this is the first Western that he actually directed. Hey, Diziers, how are you? Yeah, Wild Bud Fox, you got to see this. Even if you hate Westerns, you're going to love this movie. It's Mando, but not in Star Wars. Thanks for joining me at One Stop Mouse. I am Bob, and we're going through classic scenes in movies. Please subscribe to One Stop Mouse. If you haven't, hit that notification bell to hear of Disney news when it happens, and hit the notification button. Let's see here. Like I said, I'm going to go all over the place, and not even for years. All right. 1981. Obviously, I'm a Raiders of the Lost Ark fan because you can see the hat similarity there. There's a scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark, and I basically called it, as you see above me, "Give me the idol, I give you the whip." That is what Cepito, one of the guys who's a guide who's with him, who nobody else will go in there, and he goes into the cave where the idol is and everything else. Yeah, this is an amazing movie, isn't it? So this is an amazing scene because well, first of all, the whole opening of the movie is great. You know, it opens up and it gives you, it's got to be, I would put it up there at the top of my list for best introductions to a character. He's walking through the jungle. You can see the people with him. You can't even see him. He's in silhouette through the mist and the steam and the rays of light in the jungle. You see him looking at a map. You see his hands. You see the back of his head. He's at this waterfall. Some guy, 20 feet back, starts pulling out his pistol to shoot him in the back because they're sick and tired of going into dangerous country, and they probably just want to rob him and get out of there. And he hears it and pulls out his whip, gets rid of the gun out of the guy's hand. The guy grabs his hand, takes off, and then all the other people who are with him are scared. I thought you might mention this since it is in your graphic. Yes, Dean. So they keep going. They see idols and they see poison darts, and a lot of the people who are with his group won't go any further. A few will, including this guy Cepito, who is with him, and they go into this cave where they're looking for this golden idol that you can see in this shot. And it's a tunnel with cobwebs and all kinds of stuff. Big, huge tarantulas are all over both of their backs, and Cepito is terrified, and Indy is wiping the tarantulas off his back. And then all of a sudden he asks, "Have I ever been on the Indiana Jones ride? I've heard it's great." You know what? I have not been on the Indiana Jones ride. I lived in Los Angeles and went there a few times in the 80s. Haven't been to Disneyland since the 80s, before the Disneyland Indiana Jones ride opened. But I would love to go on that ride. I seriously would love to go on that ride. So anyway, they're in the cave, and all of a sudden he tells Cepito to step back, and Indy puts his arm out into this ray of light, and all these big spears come out from both sides of the wall, and the half-rotted remains of a colleague of Indiana Jones who got there first is embedded in these spikes, and they go on. They go over this sort of a big chasm, both of them swinging on the whip, and then you get to this part of the opening scene where there are all these stones in the floor. Snakes. I don't like snakes. Yeah, with me it's spiders, okay? And Florida's got some whopping spiders, man. It's the size of your hand spiders. Jeez. Snakes aren't so bad. I lived in the mountains and dealt with copperheads and rattlesnakes and stuff, but spiders, jeez. Spiders. Why did it have to be spiders? So Jones is going. He figures out that you've got to step only on these certain stones without poison darts coming out of the wall. He gets up to this idol. He's looking at it, scratching his stubble, trying to figure out how much does this thing weigh. Right after this shot, he kind of pushes the idol off and replaces it with a bag of sand, but it's too heavy, and that pedestal that idol is on sinks down, and all heck breaks loose. All the stones and everything, the whole place starts falling apart. Jones just takes off running, and there are darts right behind him as he's scampering out of there. And when they get to the hole that they had just gotten over, swinging over on the whip, Sapiro is over there on the other side and pulled the whip loose of this piece of branch log that was over the top. And Jones is like, give me the whip. And as it says up here, Sapiro goes, give me the idol, I give you the whip. They go back and forth a few times. And behind Sapiro, on the other side, across from him, Jones can see that this big, huge stone door is sliding closed slowly, and it doesn't have too much to go. So he throws him the idol, and of course, Sapiro drops the whip and goes, sorry, senor. Rats and Temple of Doom. Yeah, I think I'd rather go for Spider. That's the thing. I got shaky in Raiders with the spiders, but not with the snakes. Rats and Temple of Doom, that didn't really get me too much. What got me in Temple of Doom was when Kate Capshaw, Spielberg's future wife, who was the damsel in distress in that movie, had to reach into that kind of a grotto that was full of bugs and hit some switch. And before that happened, she's got all kinds of huge cockroaches all over her and everything. Yeah, I didn't like that either. All right, so he decides to dive across and, take his chances. He pulls himself up on some old vines eventually, gets underneath the stone wall, grabs the whip, sees that Sapiro, who's with him, was in such a rush that he's now impaled on these spikes. And then all of a sudden he starts hearing this noise, and he looks up, and the spectacular end to this whole opening scene is the one that all of you guys know. There's this huge boulder on this sort of a track that's behind him and comes rolling down on him like it's a pinball game, and he's running with the idol till he jumps out the entrance of the cave, and then the boulder seals up the cave, and of course his arch nemesis Belloc, the bad guy archaeologist, is standing out there with these let's see, if only you spoke Hovati? I think Hovati Indians. And then that's a whole other scene. There are a lot of good scenes in there, but that's one of my big favorite scenes. Let's see. We like that show, also very entertaining. The Indiana Jones show. Dizzyers, I didn't know that existed. Eek. The Indiana Jones stage show is great. Hi, Dizzyers. How are ya? My friend owns an escape room business in Kansas City, and one room is designed like Raiders, and it is amazing. Way better than... Oh, wow. That's amazing just to hear that. Dizzyers are great. It's a great show. Okay. All right. So let's go on to our next amazing scene. Amazing. All right. Now we're going back a few years. Dean and I can appreciate this. Now, if you haven't seen this, and I'm sure a lot of people here haven't seen this, trust me when I say this, you haven't seen this, but you know this movie, even if you don't know you know it. Casablanca, 1942. This is World War II era U.S., and it's a great love story. It is. It's a great love story. Well, it's even back before my time, Disinfinity. I was born in 1962, so it was made 20 years before I was born. I'm not that vintage, right, Dean? Amazing movie, such a classic, yes. My son's favorite movie when he was only 13. Okay, so amazing love story, amazing wartime propaganda too, actually, if you think about it, for the U.S. about how, we have to put the good of the world and the good of our country over our own good and our own relationships, and that basically is the hidden message. But the reason that you would know this is of all the gin joints, you had to walk into mine. Yeah, there's so many famous lines from this movie that you've heard them, even if don't know that it's from this. The Great Movie Ride definitely showed the scene well. Yes, of all the gin joints, so they're in love. It's wartime Paris and Humphrey, but this is before this part. But in the setup of the movie, they're in love. It's wartime in Paris in World War II. The Germans are marching in. It's dangerous. They agree that they're going to both meet up at a train station and they're going to go away together. And he shows up there with train tickets and he's all excited and all goo goo gaga in love and standing there in the pouring rainstorm, and she never shows up. And he basically becomes hard-hearted and doesn't really care for ladies anymore, sort of the way James Bond did after his initial love in Casino Royale. Vesper died. He's had a hard time opening up, and then years and years later, she shows up with her husband, who is a Norwegian freedom fighter and very famous, and there's all kinds of intrigue and everything, but of course he's like a wreck. He thought that was the line that Mickey Ears had, of all the gin joints in all the world, you had to walk into mine. Why are you here? So that's the setup with all this intrigue and everything, and she tries. You can't really get out of this northern Africa place of Casablanca. It's sort of like Mos Eisley spaceport in Star Wars, kind of. All these people from all over the place, refugees and criminals and everything. And especially when you're high profile and the Nazis don't want you going anywhere, the only way that you could get out of there would be with some sort of documents that he really shouldn't have. And Rick, who Humphrey Bogart played in the picture there, will not give them to Elsa. And even though they were in love, she pulls a gun on him and then can't. And then they talk all about how they want to run away together. And then Rick, at the very last minute, at the end, with the heart of gold, at an airport, where they're gonna run away together and get on a plane. He basically, in this scene, explains to her that, you've got to go with your Norwegian freedom fighter for the good of the world, and you might want to go with me now because your feelings are overwhelming. You might not regret it today, but the line is, but maybe tomorrow and for the rest of your life. Play it again, Sam. Famous line. His cohort, Rick, Humphrey Bogart's cohort, is this guy, sort of his guy who works for him and goes from place to place because he, runs bars and stuff, and he plays the piano. And when Elsa, Ingrid Bergman, shows up unexpectedly, she asks Sam to play their favorite song when they were a couple in love, and so he has to challenge himself. If she can take it, then I can take it. Anyway, so this line here, why that's in there is my dog is walking around back there, and I can see him in the green screen. Jeez. So why that's that line, here's looking at you, kid. That's one of the famous lines that you would know, even if you've never even seen this movie. When he's explaining all of this, that he's going to hold this inspector. He's holding this inspector who's just off frame there at gunpoint. that she's got to go away with her husband for the good of the world, all of that. One of the things he says is, "We'll always have Paris." That's the famous line. But the biggest famous line from this movie is, "Here's looking at you, kid." And this scene is amazing. All these scenes are amazing. You could just type in Casablanca, "Here's looking at you, kid," when you stop watching this and watch them on YouTube. Just those scenes, any of these scenes that I'm talking about, and it'll get you interested in watching the whole movie. Let me assure you. All right, so if you have not subscribed to One Stop Mouse, please do so. Hit the notification bell, and I would appreciate it. So many classic lines. Really, really. I mean, that movie's just insanely good. All right, so like a lot of movie franchises that have totally leaned on the very first film that was good to go and make another several films that were not good. This is one of those, the Rocky series of movies. Now, Rocky, if you guys don't know it, you think of Sylvester Stallone as a big tough guy and everything. Rocky was actually written by Sylvester Stallone as a breakout role for himself. And he literally was living in a basement in New York, blacked out, covered all the windows, and forced himself to sit down and write every day. If any of you have ever tried writing anything, or if any of you have ever tried writing a screenplay, you know that that's the hardest part of it. Not the editing, not the directing, not everything else. It really is. I mean, there's nothing. It's just a blank screen. So he wrote this. Yo, Adrian, Mickey's ears. Very good. Yeah. So there he is. You know, he created the whole thing. And this is my favorite scene, most iconic scene. So what a great character study. Even if you hated those other movies, you really should revisit the original Rocky that was made in 1976. Natalia Shire as his girlfriend Adrian, and Sylvester Stallone, Burgess Meredith as his coach. And it's such a character study. It's ridiculous. It's really, really good. He's in love. You know, he's a leg breaker, basically. A kind-hearted leg breaker who comes up with a lot of excuses for his mob boss to give people extra time to pay back on loans and stuff instead of hurting them. So that endears you to him a little. And then he's a fighter, but not really a fighter anymore. You know, he smokes and he drinks and he's getting a little bit older. And he had promise, but he really didn't make it, and he didn't apply himself. And so he gets a little money here and there that he gets by on, besides being a leg breaker, by fighting these guys who are the Disney Kid. Hey, how are you? So the Disney Kid, this young man is a son of my good friend Isabel, who was a former cast member of mine at Disney before we got laid off recently. And he has just started a YouTube channel and getting involved in the YouTube community. So you guys, please check out the Disney Kid and say hi to him. I would appreciate that very much. I think the Disney Kid was inspired by you, Disinfinity, which is interesting too, because I've been doing a lot of live streams as of late. And you were the guy who, in our little interview, asked me why I wasn't doing live streams anymore. You didn't say anything more than that, and I just kind of had a few excuses. And the more I thought about it, the more inspired I got. So it's very interesting how everybody can make a difference, even in ways that they don't know. And of course, as a former Disney cast member, I definitely know that. And I was a counselor dealing with troubled adolescence at one time too. And I definitely know how even the smallest things that you think don't mean anything can really, really help people out. Even to, what's that theory? 6 degrees of separation. Okay. Anyway, enough of the philosophy. In Rocky gets this chance, just a fluke chance. There's this guy, Apollo Creed, who's, like a Muhammad Ali type guy who's full of flash and dance and everything. And he's champion of the world. And they're trying to figure out for the bicentennial in 1976 how they can come up with a gimmick, Apollo Creed's team. To get a lot of exposure and a lot of views on TV and a lot of people filling the stadium and everything. And what they figure out is they want to honor the bicentennial year by having an unknown Italian-American, because of the connection to Christopher Columbus, fight Apollo Creed for the title. And of course, they think it's a joke. And give him a chance because America is the land of opportunity. And it doesn't quite turn out the way that they, Apollo Creed's team thought. But going backwards a little, Rocky has to start training for this big fight. He actually doesn't know if he's going to do it. Adrian, his girlfriend that he meets at the pet store all the time where she works. Another great scene in this movie is the scenes with them when she's in the pet store. When he comes back to his seedy apartment, where he introduces her to his 2 friends, his turtles, Cuff and Link. It's very endearing in some ways. It really, really is. I have to say, I love this film. You got to revisit this film. So anyway, he's training, and it's like misery. He's hurting. He hasn't been in good shape for a long time. He's cracking like a half a dozen raw eggs in a glass and slurping them down. He's running. He can barely move. But as time goes on, all kinds of things start happening. He has this strange way of training that's getting attention because he gets upset at his soon-to-be brother-in-law who works at a butcher's. So he goes into the freezer and starts pounding on raw meat, basically, like sides of beef. And he trains more and more. And finally, he gets up to the top of this courthouse stairs where he barely can make it to early each morning. He's practically crawling up the steps. And then he gets to a point where he's like bounding up those steps and he's got his arms up. And this is that iconic scene. And actually, this was shot in Philadelphia. Of course, too, tied into the whole Liberty and the bicentennial. And they actually put up a statue of Rocky up on top of those steps. That was there until a couple of years ago, I think. I think they just took it down. And that's pretty cool. The other scene in this movie, of course, would be, I'll throw in a little extra, is if you haven't seen this original movie or if you forgot it, when Rocky gets in the ring with Apollo Creed, he's in the ring and he's not flash and dance and he's like a bull. He is. He's like a bull. He can't really move that well. But, the thing is, when he connects, it's some serious damage. He's like a tank. So Apollo Creed is dancing and everything, and he's taunting him and he's laughing at him, and he gets too confident. And he lets and Rocky gets in there and hits him just once after Apollo Creed's hit him and banged him around and mocked him and everything like 50 times. And Rocky hits him just once, and Apollo Creed is bam on the floor, dazed, almost knocked out. And there are moments when I've been in movie theaters. I was there in 1976 when this came out. There are moments in movie theaters where it's an experience you'll always remember, where the crowd stands up and screams and cheers. And this was one of them. So that was the Rocky. Let's see. The next scene is... All right. A lot of people know this movie. It is a Christmas classic, but it has not always been a Christmas classic. But it has not always been a Christmas classic. That is because although Frank Capra directed it, who directed a lot of classic films like Some Like It Hot and other movies like that, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, which is another movie with Jimmy Stewart in it, which is actually on this list. This came out right after World War II, and I don't know why, but it really didn't get the attention that it should have. And then in the 80s, in the early 80s, it started playing on TV a lot. And what I found out later, well, what do you know, Bert? What do you know? Bert is okay. So Bert is well. What do you know, Bert? Bert in A Wonderful Life. He's is he the Bert? Is he the cop or the cab driver? He's the cop, right? So this didn't get a lot of attention until it started playing like crazy on TV in the 80s because there was a clerical error, and the rights were not renewed for the film. And so because it was played so much in the 80s, it became a 1946 film, became a classic because of how many times it was played in the 80s. At the same time, new things had come out that started to become classics, like A Christmas Story. The Cop, right. Thank you. The Cop. Oh, yeah, there's a... there's a famous scene about that, and I didn't know that. I figured it was a hit out of the gate. Yeah, no, it wasn't. It was not a hit out of the gate. So anyway, so you had this film playing, and becoming a classic that late. And I even had not seen it before it started getting played in the 80s. And now it's like, when Christmas comes, I've got discs of my favorite things that I have to see. Miracle, the original Miracle on 42nd Street, It's a Wonderful Life, the puppet version of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Those are all classic Christmas things for me. It's strange how some pieces of media become popular after their release. Yes. Blade Runner, that was released back in the early 80s, and Harrison Ford was in it. Blade Runner was one of those films that was a miserable failure and didn't make any money. And then it came in like 80, 90, like 30 years later, it went on to become a super cult classic, enough so they basically let Ridley Scott, the director, have a whole ton of money to release that second Blade Runner film that came out just recently. So it is for... So anyway, let's see, what are we on at 7:50? In this film, It's a Wonderful Life, that many of you might have seen, Jimmy Stewart... There have been a lot of movies that have sort of copied this movie. Even cartoons with Scrooge McDuck and stuff like that, that have copied this movie. Who did? I know on the Lifetime Network they've copied this movie. Anyway, the basic story, which I know you've heard, if you haven't seen this, you've seen it in some version on a Christmas special, is somebody is unhappy with their life, in this case Jimmy Stewart. Something bad has happened, and they basically feel like the world would have been better if they had never been born. And an angel comes to show them at Christmas time that that's not true, and that no man is a failure who has friends. And that actually is a line from the movie. And this is the finale of the movie, where basically George's uncle, who works at a savings and loan with him, has misplaced a lot of money, and the bad guy in the film basically takes it and doesn't tell anybody about it. And when the investigators are coming to George Bailey's house, who Jimmy Stewart plays in this movie, in this scene to take him away to jail, excuse me, the entire town, has taken up a collection because of all the wonderful things he's done for all of them during his life, and how he stayed and been devoted to the town. And they come up with the money for the debt that he is in, and the investigators rip up the paper, and they're all singing Christmas tunes. And right at the very end, his daughter, Zuzu, says one of the little bells on the Christmas tree shakes. The tree gets bumped into, I guess, and she says, "Look, Daddy, teacher says, and when a bell rings, an angel gets his wings." And he looks at her astounded and laughs and says, "That's right, that's right." And then he looks up and says, "Attaboy, Clarence." Clarence was the name of the angel who he didn't believe in and thought was crazy until he figured out that this was really happening, seeing what the world was like without you being born, and that it was important for him to be around, that so many people depended on him. And anyway, it's a wonderful scene. If you haven't seen It's a Wonderful Life, I know some of these movies are old. They might not be your cup of tea, but like I said, old or not, some of these movies are unbelievable. All right, let's go to the next one. Told you I talk a lot. All right, Batman Begins. Not as old of a movie. The first in a series of 3 movies with Christian Bale playing Batman. This one came out in 2005. And I have watched and rewatched this sequence so much, it's amazing I didn't wear out the disc. Anyway, in Batman Begins, there is a scene that is, I'm referring to it as the Tumbler chase / backup. The Tumbler is the Batmobile in this situation in these 3 movies. And backup is a line that Batman says just after the, actually it's just before the chase to Commissioner Gordon about needing backup. So the deal is, this scene starts with Batman has just gone in and found out how they have been spreading poison all throughout Gotham City, and it's this thing that they don't know about yet, and it's got to be inhaled, and it's gone through the water system. He finds the villains there. They get into a little bit of a fight. One of the villains basically tells his henchmen, he's beating them up, and they're like, "Well, what do we do?" And he goes, "Call the cops. They'll take care of them." So they get out of there. Batman is in there in this under construction Arkham Asylum, and the SWAT team from Gotham City comes. They surround the building. They're afraid to go in. They're at the steps and everything. And Batman is in there. Commissioner Gordon goes in ahead of everybody because they won't go in unless he goes in first. So he goes in, goes up the stairs to the top of the stairs, one of the upper floors, is talking to Batman, and Batman is basically telling them that his love of his life, Rachel Dawes, has just gotten exposed from this bad guy to this terrible poison, and she's going to lose her mind if she doesn't get an antidote to it that he has back at the Batcave right away. And all of the SWAT teams are coming in, and there's no way out, and Batman pulls off this little device off the bottom of his shoe, off this heel of his shoe, and hits this button, and they're talking, he and Commissioner Gordon, and they cut back and forth, and apparently it's a beacon that attracts bats, like by the thousands. And Commissioner Gordon doesn't know what the heck's going on as they're talking. He's like, what is that? He hears some kind of sound. He hears the bats in the distance. And Batman looks at him and he says, back up. And that's why it says back up. And so in the picture here, what you're basically seeing is as the SWAT team is coming in, Batman dives from the top of the stairs with his wings spread and takes that device and drops it down. So all these bats are swirling around, attracted to the device, and all of these SWAT team members can't see him or get to him or get a clear shot. And then he gets out of the asylum, and after a funny line from Commissioner Gordon, where he sees Batman's vehicle, which is a tank, painted black, and says, I got to get me one of those. The most amazing end rest of this scene, the tumbler chase, happens where a frantic Batman is racing through the streets of Gotham City because he's got a limited amount of time. He's got Rachel, his girlfriend, with him. He's got a limited amount of time to get back to the Batcave and inject her with this serum. So he's jumping from roof to roof. He's going on through. They shot part of it in Chicago, on the underground parts of their main streets, and racing around and throwing devices off and going into like a stealth mode. And it's quite an amazing scene. One of the best action sequences I've ever seen. If you haven't seen it, I would really check it out. All right, let's see. What do we got? Boom. All right. No one can contest this for being one of the greatest scenes of all time. Star Wars A New Hope opening shot. All right. So, as a 14-year-old kid in 1977, I'm sitting in a movie theater watching a movie I've never heard of before on its first day in one of the last of the grand old owned by 20th Century Fox theaters. Because my mom was trying to get me out of the house. I was being a pain in the butt. And I'm sitting there, and I was just kind of a sarcastic, skeptical teenager. Like, what is this? And I'm sitting there, and the music starts, and I'm like, whoa, that's interesting. And then the crawl of the words. And then when the camera tilts down from the star field to the planet there, and Princess Leia's ship races over your head, and then the Star Destroyer behind it, I lost it. I mean, I know all of you guys lost it too. Everybody talks about this, but I couldn't even believe it. I've never seen anything like it before. I was stunned. I literally hid behind the screen in the theater like I was some super genius. Nobody else is in the theater but me, and it's like this kid keeps coming back. So nobody said anything. But then I went home, and I was talking about this movie all over the place to my parents and making Chewbacca and R2-D2 sounds, and they didn't know what the heck was wrong with me. But truly, not just a classic scene, because the whole scene is classic too, with Darth Vader and his stormtroopers coming in and all of that. But this shot is definitely got to be one of the coolest shots of all time. All right, let's see. Next up on our greatest scenes, most classic scenes of all time. All right, Dean, we're going back to 1972. The Godfather, Francis Ford Coppola's big hit in 1972, like I said. And this is the scene where Marlon Brando, the man on the right, for those of you that don't know, has a classic line where he's basically trying to help out a young singer, Johnny Fontaine, who is the guy in the white suit on the right. You're right. That's exactly right. He's based on a young Frank Sinatra in real life and what supposedly occurred. And he's had some problems with issues. This young Sinatra type guy, he's a good singer, but he's having problems with some of the big wigs in Hollywood. And he comes to the Godfather, who he knows. The Godfather is, you do him a favor, and he does you a favor, you might have to give him one back someday, all of that. Very interesting subculture, very, very cool. I know you've seen stuff like The Sopranos and stuff, but not classic like this. So he has to literally slap him around a little and get him to calm down and stop crying and tell him to be a man. Johnny Fontaine is told by the Godfather. And then he's incredulous, but he's like, well, he's the Godfather says he's going to fix the situation. And he's like, well, how are you going to fix this situation? This is a big wig Hollywood producer and everything. And he just kind of looks at him like, I'll make him an offer he can't refuse. And this is mob stuff, so an offer he can't refuse is kind of bloody and violent. But it makes the point, and all of a sudden the guy, I'm sure, got the movie. So let's see. Going back a little bit now into the 80s. Love this film more than Mad Max, or the third one of the Mel Gibson ones, more than Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, and more than the recent Mad Max film. This was pretty cool, this movie. The opening montage / chase for the Road Warrior from 1982. It basically, the movie opens. You can see this on YouTube too. Please do yourselves a favor. Go to YouTube and see some of these things. This is very, very interesting and amazing. And the editor, I don't even know this, but that editor, I'm sure, had to get some accolades. I can't believe that they used stock footage, old black and white footage of riots and war and stuff like that, and actually edited it together with his voiceover of this aging man who is supposed to be the little boy who was in this movie. I can remember a lot of the lines. It kind of fades up, and Max is walking down this road, and this voice is saying, my life fades, the vision dims, all that remains are memories. And basically he tells this story of how two mighty warrior tribes, two huge nations, started battling each other and because they had problems with resources. It looks like oil. So there was some kind of big war between, I guess, like the U.S. and the Soviet Union that involved something to do with... Hold on 1 second, please. Yes. You know it's live. Why? Because I have to let my dog out of the room. Yes, Walt. If Walt from Mouse Talk is watching this, either live or on the replay, he gets to laugh now because he always does that. Okay, so the beginning montage is old black and white war footage and stuff put together in such a creative way with the voiceover, talking about these mighty nations that went to war, and basically there was this Armageddon apocalyptic sort of situation where, in this weird way, a lot of these vicious roving gangs took to the highways, just getting what they could get in any way that they could get it. And there were these special police units that were appointed to take care of that violence, one of which was Mad Max, in a movie that was before this called Mad Max. What happened is his wife was killed by one of these gangs, and it explains that a little bit. And then the voice says, men like Max, the warrior Max, all that he loved was taken from him in the roar of an engine, and he became a burnt out, desolate man. And here in this blighted place, he learned to live again. And then in this shot that you see right here, there you go. You can see the supercharger right there. The camera pulls out of a close shot of the supercharger in the engine of his car to this, and he's being chased by two of these gangs, these crazy mohawked gangs on motorcycles and in cars and everything. And it's like another version of Han and Chewbacca. He's got this vehicle that's gone through all these that's just destroyed and crushed up and everything, and but he's modified it, and he's got a supercharger on the engine, and he's got a Australian shepherd with him, his dog, in the vehicle, and the dog is reacting to what the gangs are doing, and gas has become this valuable commodity. And so he starts running out of gas, even though he's like ahead of them because he's got this supercharged engine. So he has to turn it off. And then he basically manipulates the situation with wrecks on the road and everything, where he outmaneuvers them and then turns the thing back on so that he smashes into. It's a very well choreographed action sequence, and one of my favorites. If you have not seen The Road Warrior, you could probably just go to YouTube and Google The Road Warrior opening montage and then opening chase. They may or may not be together. So if you have not subscribed to Long-Winded Can Talk About Movies Forever, One Stop Mouse, I'm Bob. This is One Stop Mouse. That's a young Mel Gibson up there in the upper left corner. And we are talking today about most classic scenes in cinema history as part of the Live Places Movie Marathon Week. And please subscribe to us. Let's see. Let's go to another one. The next one is... Oh my gosh. Okay, so I'm speechless. That's got to be something, right? This movie is very old, okay? It was made in 1922. It's a silent film with subtitles and organ music in the track. It was made by a famous classic director of the early German cinema, and his name was Fritz Lang. This is the scariest movie I've ever seen in my life. And it's the original vampire movie, Nosferatu. There have been other movies based on this. There was actually a movie that was done about 10 years ago that was really funny because filmmakers are so obsessed with this movie because of how scary it is that they actually made a movie that was about the making of the movie and how like cast members and stuff would disappear because the guy was really a vampire and all this stuff. Sort of a black comedy. It was made in 1922. The entire thing is the scariest movie I've ever seen, and with a lack of technology, the skill that it took with a lack of technology, I mean, it's not like you could make Alien or something back in 1922. It's not just scary in what you do see, but what you don't see. And it's horrifying. I'm looking at this picture here, and you might giggle looking at it, but I almost, Dean, I know you don't like horror movies. If you have not seen this movie, Dean from It's a Live Place, you gotta watch this movie. Just go to Bing Images and just look at some of the imagery from it, just the shadow imagery and everything. It is unbelievably scary. So anyway, and remember, it's Nosferatu Symphony of Terror, not a couple of the remakes. So this was made in 1922. Enough said. Next, we're doing the most classic scenes in cinema history. Actually, the one we just were the movie we were just talking about, Nosferatu, I could not find the scene that is so super scary. The entire movie is scary, like I said, but I couldn't find the scariest scene, and that actually is, he's got his hands up and he's coming at somebody. But trust me, it's more than just a scene for this movie. It's the entire movie. He is a vampire. He is Nosferatu is Dracula. It's the same thing. That's his name. And it is the scariest vampire movie, scariest movie I've ever seen. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Classic movie. Walt Disney's favorite film. He never felt that any movie he did before or after Snow White was ever as good as Snow White. The only thing he was as satisfied with as the film Snow White was his accomplishment with Disney, the opening of Disneyland in Anaheim, California. And those are the two big things. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, 1937. Walt actually didn't receive an Academy Award. He kind of did. He got an honorary Academy Award for animation, and it was like one big statue and then seven little ones. But it did captivate audiences, and the reason that he was pleased with it, and if you ever look at any of the reviews, things that people said back then, is they couldn't believe that animation could make them get emotional, that they could laugh, that they could cry, that whole thing. And that's hard to do with animation. And so one of the big moments, obviously, in that, obviously everybody knows the Snow White story, is where the spell is broken. The witch's poison apple, the spell is broken as the prince, Charming, comes in, and she is awoken by true love's kiss from him as the mourning dwarves turn joyous. And it's quite a classic scene. Moving on to the most classic scenes in cinema history. And of course, I'm a big Walt Disney fan, so. All right, Lady and the Tramp. I don't know where you are, unless you have lived under a rock your whole life. It doesn't matter if you're somebody, definitely a revolutionary movie. Yeah, it was. Yeah, Snow White. Lady and the Tramp, The Pasta Kiss. They just imitated it in the live version of the movie. They have imitated it in other kind of, farces of the movie and everything. But The Pasta Kiss in 1955's Lady and the Tramp, as they're watching, let's see, is they're watching the owner of the restaurant where they're eating their pasta meal play the accordion for them, and they find themselves sucking on the same piece of pasta and kissing each other. Classic moment. Tony. I'm pretty sure it's Tony in that scene. Any Disney files out there in the stream? Is it the guy who came out who's working for Tony? Or is it Tony? I think it's Tony who's singing, "This is the night. It's a beautiful..." Okay, I won't break your ears. Now, what I didn't tell you is that my wife and I, right after we got engaged at Epcot, Tony sang that song to us at Tony's Town Square in Magic Kingdom. So there you go. All right, so next in our line of most classic movie scenes in cinema history is 1982's E.T. the Extraterrestrial, and of course, the entire movie, awesome, really great, loved it. I mean, Spielberg's made lots of classic movies, but this is like, I mean, there was a cultural phenomena when this came out. Neil Diamond actually wrote Heartlight, the song Heartlight. I did too. I sobbed at the end. Tony does sing the accordion in. Yes, thank you, Disinfinity. I did too. I totally did. I'm gonna admit it. I watch Disney Plus and I'm sobbing all the time. But yeah, this tearjerker finale. After all the stuff they went through, after the ups and the downs and the ET, watching TV and trying to figure out what's in the refrigerator and getting sick and then flying over the moon and all of this, and the world of kids. What a fantastic, fantastic movie. And then at the end, of course, E.T., who is a botanist from another planet, who was studying plant life and collecting plant life, basically UFO investigators came up on them really quick and they had to take off, and E.T. was left behind, and he has to kind of find his way and figure out a way to communicate with his people, and he's being cared for a little boy and his brother and sister, and then eventually their friends, and basically living in the little girl's closet with a lot of stuffed animals, and that's a very funny scene too. But the tearjerker finale of that, I dare anybody to watch that movie. I mean, and really watch it too, not kind of watch it and kind of look at it once in a while. Sit down, watch the entire thing, which isn't very hard. I dare anybody, even the toughest people, to tell me that they didn't get a little teary, a little weepy-eyed, because that movie is awesome. I love that movie so much. And I know with everything that Steven Spielberg has done, Schindler's List, so many other movies, serious and not, that he said that this will always have a special place in his heart, and no wonder. Okay, next. In most classic scenes in cinema history, according to Bob from One Stop Mouse. All right. The Wizard of Oz. The Wizard of Oz from 1939. Now, and the Somewhere Over the Rainbow scene where Judy Garland sings the iconic song Somewhere Over the Rainbow, where she's dreaming of getting out of this little town and going away someplace magical, which she does. 1939 was a year that went down in history for cinema history, for films, because Mr. Smith Goes to Washington with Jimmy Stewart, The Wizard of Oz, and Gone with the Wind, and I think something else, all came out in 1939. Any of those films, if they had come out on there, without that kind of competition a year or two or three later, would probably have all won Best Picture for that year. But of course, when they all come out in 1939, only one can. The Wizard of Oz, such an iconic film, watched by so many millions of people. It did not actually win the Academy Award for 1939. It was another film that came out that year, and that was Gone with the Wind. Judy Garland was great in this film, and she had been in a lot of smaller movies and was known for being in movies with Mickey Rooney especially, and having a great singing voice, but this really put her into superstardom. And Somewhere Over the Rainbow, beautiful song. Watch that. The two scenes, I'd say this, and then of course the scene in The Wizard of Oz where she comes out of the tornado and opens the door and it goes from black and white to color, which they actually did a trick. They actually had her in this little facade part of the cabin, and she was It was all black and white, what she was wearing, and everything was painted black and white. And then she went out the door, and it was all vivid color, Munchkin Land. And then some of the later scenes with the witch, but I always remember that one shot of them as they're going towards the castle through the poppy fields. That's amazing. Amazing. All right, next in our list of most classic scenes in cinema history, according to One Stop Mouse. The classic Singing in the Rain, starring Donald Pleasance, Gene Kelly, and Debbie Reynolds, who is Carrie Fisher's mom and who just recently passed away right after Princess Leia's mom, right after she did. This was made in 1952, and the classic scene in this really is the entire film. I don't see how you can, I mean, you know, that's a good film right there but they're dancing and singing, and there's about 10 scenes. So really, it's a musical with a lot of musical numbers, and if you like musicals, there's no way you can't like this. If you've never seen this film and you've seen La La Land, which came out recently, and you love that dance sequence with the two of them on top of the hill as the sun is going down, you would love this movie. If you have not seen it, you definitely want to sit down and watch this. So I hope I'm making new fans from some of these old movies, because we have quite a mix here of old and new. All right. Coming up a little bit, Back to the Future, 1985. Classic scene in that I'm citing is Marty meets young mom. So there's Marty McFly on the right, and there is his mom. Basically, he has gone through a time machine, which is actually a souped-up DeLorean from this mad professor that he works for, and he has gone back in time to the 50s, and his mom is now a young woman again. And he is shocked because his mom is like himself in many ways, and actually kind of forward in this scene, wants to date Marty McFly, and he's like, I can't date my mom. So, but it's very interesting, and one of those films too where there's commentary about these things, you know, about how, you know, as people get older, they view things differently, but you did the same thing. And of course, the excuse, you know, that parents always have is they don't want you to make the same mistakes they did. But of course, the only reason they say that is they had to make you know what I mean. So anyway, that was very interesting. Moving on to One Stop Mouse's greatest scenes in cinema history. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, 1939, the long speech. And you might recognize that gentleman. He is several years younger. That is Jimmy Stewart in 1939. It's a Wonderful Life came out several years later in 1946, the Christmas classic. This is Jimmy Stewart as a young congressman. And this would be something that would be really, really good for a lot of people to watch if they could. Right now, especially with everything that's going on in politics, and, you know, not going to get into that, but it's very interesting because there are political statements in this, but not party-wise so much as just corruption and stuff. It's Jimmy Stewart as your common man. This actually got remade with Adam Sandler in it several years back, and that was called Mr. Deeds Goes to Washington. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, basically it's this guy who's your common man in this small Midwestern town, and he kind of gets set up by some people who have been in office for a long time that, if they get him into office, they'll vote however they want him to vote because he's, just a pushover. And he starts to realize really, really quick that this is terrible. I didn't understand this is how government, went, and how could people not care, and how could lobbyists, be ruling everything. So anyway, there's a rule that you may have heard about. This has actually happened a couple of times, not just in the old days, but a few years ago as well, where you can get up on the floor on the Senate or the House, and they cannot progress with their proceedings until you are done speaking with the point that you're talking about. So if if things are being contested, like this hasn't happened, but imagine if they wanted to do this right now because they can't come to an agreement about stimulus checks in the Senate. Well, in this movie, basically, Mr. Smith gets up and he's waiting. He wants people to do the right thing. He's trying to let the right things happen. And so he gets up and makes this long, passionate speech, which goes on for like a day or something, like 24 hours. And you can see in this process, he's becoming a wreck. So it's Jimmy Stewart at his best, making this long, impassioned speech in a Frank Capra movie, who's also the director of It's a Wonderful Life, and it will touch a lot of heartstrings and maybe touch a few brain cells as well about what you want from the government and what you think. All right, better get out of that one quick. All right. All right. Next on our list of famous scenes, most classic scenes in cinema history that I have graphics for right now. This is the film in 1939 that beat out The Wizard of Oz and the previous graphic you just saw from Mr. Deeds Goes to Washington for Best Picture Academy Award of the Year in 1939. Gone with the Wind, of course, you could not get as classic as Gone with the Wind and The Wizard of Oz and stuff, so here it is. And there, one scene that's cited a lot by people that they love so much about this is a spectacular scene where they burn the city of Atlanta. And that is a spectacular scene. And actually, I was going to cite this, but then I changed my mind when I thought about it, because I thought of the scene, if you look up at the two shots up there, it's a full body shot of Scarlett O'Hara, Vivian Leigh, with the sun setting, and then a closer up one. There's a shot where it's even further away, full on her body, as she's like that. She's under this old oak tree on her plantation. Basically, the deal is she has just, within the last couple of minutes, she's gone from being such a rich and wealthy and cared for and pampered Southern belle, the epitome of a rich, pampered, spoiled Southern belle prior to the war, and now that the Civil War is going on, fighting off soldiers and carpetbaggers right after the war, and all kinds of people that are trying to take advantage of them and their situation because the men are away and they're not protected and stuff. And she's trying to keep a stiff upper lip and be a good example for her family and the people around her. But when nobody's looking, she runs out at sunset and is digging in the dirt for some kind of root vegetable, a turnip or a potato or something like that. And then she starts viciously eating it and swallowing it down like an animal. And she realizes, I've come so far from being so elegant to being this, and she realizes it, and she grabs that, what's left of that root vegetable, and holds it up to the sky, you see in that shot to the right, and she makes this famous speech where she is determined. As God is my witness, I'll never be hungry again. I won't let them take me down. I'm not going to give up. And she's determined that she's going to get it all back again. And that's a very, very famous scene, very pretty scene. A lot of very beautiful visuals in this film. Moving on next to great scenes in cinema history according to One Stop Mouse. Here we are, moving up in the years. The first Jurassic Park film in 1993. The scene is T-Rex breaks out, as you can see up there, and I'm sure everybody remembers that. So Jurassic Park was an important film. Spielberg and Kathleen Kennedy, Frank Marshall, the producers, all these people, they really didn't know how. I mean, this had been on the table for a little bit. It was a good idea. They wanted to do it, but they're like, how are we going to do this? And there were some computer geek kind of people that said, well, we have something that you might want to look at. They were kind of playing around with. And they showed them some renderings that they had done with this new computer technology, the CGI stuff, of the Brontosaurus, those first dinosaurs they see in this film, who they come upon and they're all amazed and they jump out of the Jeep and they're eating. And they knew right then, Spielberg and his team said they knew that cinema had changed from that point on, because if they could bring dinosaurs back to life, like this T-Rex in this amazing scene, then, you could basically do films about anything. And this, you had seen various things. You had seen more peaceful dinosaurs. You had seen a pregnant dinosaur giving birth. You had only been hinted at. Well, actually, they went to see the T-Rex near the fencing there and didn't see him. And then in this scene, during a storm, where this guy is trying to steal technology taking advantage of this hurricane that's come. He creates in the chaos a big computer shutdown and power outage, and the electrical fencing that holds back the dinosaurs has gone down. And so the vehicles too are kind of self-propelled sort of vehicles, like on a Disney ride. They stop as well, and they're kind of stuck there waiting for it to come back. And they're looking with their... Did they film this at Universal Hollywood? Disney Kid? I think they shot some parts of it at Universal Hollywood. I think they shot a majority of it in Hawaii, on location in Hawaii, which isn't surprising, with the anything that has huge wide vistas and everything. Certainly don't have that jungle type stuff in California, but I think they shot some of the closer stuff, maybe even this scene, because it's dark, and you could get away with that in Universal Hollywood. So the kids that are in this movie are sitting in one of the vehicles, and they've got night vision goggles, and they look, and where this goat has been tied up for a while, which is kind of like a token food for the T-Rex, is gone. And then all of a sudden, before you know it, this amazing scene happens where the T-Rex just kind of, you hear and see the fencing start to creak and break, and then right here he steps over, and all heck starts breaking loose. It's an amazing scene. Really you'll love that scene. Just like with Rocky and a lot of the other films, the sequels were not that strong. Some of that's novelty too. You see it and okay, well, it's hard to give you more. I've noticed that with a lot of sequels, what they give you in terms of more is just more T-Rexes, more effects, more where they don't give you more story and more good characters and everything. And I guess people basically figure that's not what people who are going to see these films want. But I don't know. Compare this first Jurassic Park to the last one that came out and tell me what you think. So, all right, let's see. Okay. And the last one I have a graphic for. I didn't put on this list that I have graphics, the ones that you usually see on critics lists and everything, like Citizen Kane, stuff like that. It's my list of scenes too, not movies. So this movie, Empire of the Sun, this is another Steven Spielberg directed film. There's been a few on this list, and this came out in 1987. And if you look at that, if you haven't seen this film, you should sit down and watch this too. It's called Empire of the Sun. Take a look at that picture up there closely. I know it's not a close-up shot, but that is Christian Bale shooting a movie when it would have been shot in 1986. So Batman Begins came out in 2005. This was shot in 1986, so it's practically him 20 years younger as a child. And why I have it called Home Alone is there are some Spielberg basically has classic visuals that go down in history. You could just go, most classic visuals. We could do a whole thing on that. And there are some classic visuals in this that you'll see if you click on Empire of the Sun online, because the boy has an obsession with airplanes. So even though he's in a Japanese prisoner of war camp eventually, he's obsessed with airplanes. So he's running and cheering the enemy just because they're pilots. And if they're pilots, then we're in the same club. But the Home Alone thing refers to this is very, very interesting and not even a lot of dialogue. It starts off, he's a rich, pampered prep school kid living in China right at the outbreak of hostilities with Japan invading China in the beginning, I guess right before the actual start of World War II, at the beginning of all of it. And he doesn't understand what's going on. He doesn't understand why, and his parents don't want to scare him. So he doesn't really know what's going on, just that things are different and weird, and his parents are trying to keep it from him. And then while he's at school, his parents basically just don't come home again. Things are inferred, they're detained and stuff like that, and then they're not there. And he goes home and there's nobody there. And of course, because he doesn't know what's going on, he doesn't want to go looking for help or anything, really. And his neighbors aren't in their houses. He doesn't know what to do. So he's just kind of sitting there like Macaulay Culkin in Home Alone. And, he's sitting there literally in front at the dinner table with the plates and everything, just like waiting for his mom to show up. Eventually he starts, like opening cans and stuff and eating those. Then when he runs out of that, he's out on the street. And that's him there in that picture trying to figure out, all of a sudden, everything has changed. And from a little boy's perspective, what the heck is going on? What am I going to do now? And the stunned look on his face. And that Home Alone part of it is quite interesting. Hold on one second, guys. So, does anybody out there have any favorite scenes from films, or just any films, period, that they would like to mention in the chat? If you do, I'm just going to do this. If you do, please put them out in the stream. I was going to put a graphic up on there, but I don't have it anymore. So here's my fake brick wall behind me. So let's see. Let's go real fast. I have gone quite a while, so I don't want to go too much. Life is Beautiful. If you haven't seen that film, that actually won an Academy Award in 1997. It's about a man who is taken to a prisoner of war camp with his little boy, and he pretends that the whole thing is a game to try to get his son through it. And then right at the end, when he's going to die, and he has to kind of reveal some of it to his son, but still sort of in a game, he tells his wife how life... Grease and Saturday Night Fever. He tells his son how life is a beautiful thing. Grease is amazing. I remember seeing Grease at a drive-in theater in Long Island back in, was that 75 maybe? And that was cool. And of course, it's got such classic songs. The hair, don't touch the hair. And Grease and Saturday Night Fever. And then oh yeah, gosh, Olivia Newton-John. I had such a crush on Olivia Newton-John. Oh my goodness. Great songs. And Saturday Night Fever. So, Mickey's Ears, what's your favorite scene from Grease, the movie? I kind of like the beginning. When they're singing that, when they're cutting back and forth between the two of them, oh, what a lovely night. And he's telling his version of things. It's just like guy locker room talk, and she's saying it in a romantic way, but he really loves her and all that. I can pretty much recite every line from Grease. Nice. Saturday Night Fever. Love that film very, very much. Of course, another film with a super classic soundtrack, trying to figure out where Summer Night's the best. Yes, that is a great scene. Trying to figure out, Mickey's Ears, do you have a favorite scene from Saturday Night Fever? I mean, there's the classic one where he's on the floor with his arm up. Great opening. With him swinging the paint can, but that's just an intro. I'm trying to think. I don't know if I have a favorite scene, but I really like the soundtrack and the movie as a whole. Both of them are just movie musicals and very cool. Let's see. Of course, another one, Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back. How could a favorite, most classical scene in history not be Darth Vader revealing to Luke that he's his father? And another scene in The Empire Strikes Back, which I love very much, is when Han Solo is going through this chase through the asteroid field where the Empire is trying to chase him down, and he's showing his pilot skills. Forrest Gump, an amazing classic film. Robert Zemeckis. Great film, and it's a history book, and it really is, that would be a great way to have a child learn history through an entertaining movie. Also, Hand Going Into Carbonite. Yes, of course, the famous line from The Empire Strikes Back that people just love on their I'm getting to it. This is Infinity on their T-shirts. Is when they did this ad-lib thing when they were shooting. She says, Princess Leia says to Han as he's about to be frozen in carbonite, "I love you," and she said, she says, "I love you," and he says, "I know," instead of "I love you too," because he was like, Han Solo wouldn't say that. My other favorite is Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Yes, when Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory came out. And I was young. I can't remember the year that came out. I was probably like 10 years old. I was so obsessed with that movie that I literally made this weird sort of a chocolate factory experience in my bedroom. And then basically started melting chocolate in a double boiler, pouring it into molds that I ordered for Willy Wonka bar molds. And they had the Wonka wrappers and the golden tickets and everything. And I couldn't actually sell. This is a great businessman in the making, right? I couldn't sell enough of the bars for people to get the tickets to show off my factory, so I started giving away the bars. My favorite scene from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, well, same thing. See, you're picking all these great musical movies where the whole film is a favorite. Of course, it wouldn't surprise you that I love the Chocolate Factory so much that I basically recreated it. So when they walk into the chocolate river room, yeah, and that whole experience, and he's singing Candyman, that whole thing is pretty cool. But I mean, how could you not love the rest? Let's see. The Big Lebowski, The Dude, very cool film. A little weird, but it's hard to not get it out of your head. The Princess Bride, that was 1998. The Princess Bride in 1987. Classic lines. Toy Story, great movie. All four classics. Yes, I agree. That was going to be on there too. Most favorite scene is when they first go in and are tasting the wallpaper and everything else. Yes, very good. Silence of the Lambs. That's a chiller. Classic scene in 1991's Silence of the Lambs is when the investigator played Patrice is going in to talk with Hannibal Lecter in his special cell with thick glass, and you got to sit back and everything. And he explains how he can be without blinking an eye, literally, and tells her how he cannibalized somebody he didn't like and ate their liver with fava beans. And then The Shining, awesome movie. The boat scene still freaks me out. Yeah, the boat scene from the original movie, yes, it does. The boat scene from the new movie really freaks me out. The Shining, awesome movie. That was going to be in that list too. That is an odd film. Hard to not remember Jack Nicholson coming through the door with an axe and saying, in a sort of a tribute to Johnny Carson and the old Tonight Show, that Johnny's here, I guess was his line. Avengers Endgame 2019. The final scene with all of those superheroes going at it, the Scarlet Witch going at Thanos, all of that happening. That was an amazing scene. Jaws in 1975. Very, very cool movie. That was almost the beginning of Spielberg's career, and it was almost he's like Walt Disney in a few ways. He had Jaws and 1941 were almost the end of his career, but that didn't happen. North by Northwest, an Alfred Hitchcock film. Jaws was in 1975. North by Northwest was in 1959. Classic film. Alfred Hitchcock, 1959. Cary Grant. And it has this very phobic, crazy thing going on where he's basically walking through a crop field. Here's Johnny. There you go. Here's Johnny. Thank you, Mickey's ears. Cary Grant's walking through a crop dusting field, and he's being dive bombed by a plane. And there's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to hide. Citizen Kane, 1941. That was a classic movie with Orson Welles in heavy prosthetics, playing a sort of a William Randolph Hearst alike king of media. And although he had everything material that he could ever wanted, he only wanted one thing on his deathbed, and his last word on his deathbed was Rosebud. And nobody knew what that was. And as different parts of his mansion are being burned in a furnace because it's a bunch of junk to other people, you see that Rosebud is the sled that he had as a little boy. And so that's like Walt Disney again. That's the one thing he was always trying to get back to his childhood. Psycho, the Birds. Yes, Alfred Hitchcock. We're going to need a bigger boat. Jaws. Very good. Yeah, that is... That's a movie where Roy Scheider, the sheriff in Jaws, is off the back, and he's got a bucket of fish guts that he's spooning into the water, chumming to attract sharks, and he's complaining about it. And then all of a sudden, this huge shark kind of comes out of the water, and like a couple of feet from him, and goes back down into the water. And he looks at the Richard Dreyfuss and the captain and says, "We're going to need a bigger boat." Psycho and the Birds. Psycho, another Alfred Hitchcock film, probably the most classic of Alfred Hitchcock's films. Black and white, late 50s, early 60s, I think very early 60s that it came out, and really utilized editing. When I was a film student, they actually would analyze the shower scene in Psycho, because this woman basically gets killed in a shower with a knife, but with all these quick shots and screaming and this music, most people don't ever realize that you never actually see the knife touch her. You just hear, like it sounds like stabbing and screaming, but it's all implied. So that is terrifying and very effective, in the same way that Nosferatu, the old 1922 movie, is effective in what you don't see in the shadows. There's no special effect that is effective as your mind, I believe. Jimmy Grahams, any suggestions on Disney YouTuber usernames? I don't know. Depends on what you like. A lot of Disney people will say stuff like, there's one guy who calls himself Turkey Legs, Dean Turkey Legs, because I guess he likes the turkey legs at Disney. Think about what you like, and then kind of abbreviate it, and if it's not used, go for it. Don't make it anything dirty or anything so people get turned off. Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Yes, it's on my scribble list. Spielberg again. Rob Fuzz, as part of the movie marathon that we're participating right as I speak, is speaking about, or did speak about, can't remember that schedule, Steven Spielberg films. I am a big Spielberg fan and actually worked for him for a very short time way back when, in the Color Purple days. And I got some very good sound life advice. And man is supremely creative and very realistic about what he's very good at and what he's not. Close Encounters. Awesome film. Still regarded by many film critics as the best film about alien, fictional film about alien encounters ever made. I'm trying to become one like you. You're my inspiration. Oh, Jimmy Grahams, thank you so much. I'm glad I am. That's terrific. Feel free to you can private message me if you're on Instagram or Twitter. You can private message me on either one of those, and we can shoot some ideas back and forth. Rambo, another Sylvester Stallone great series. Yes, actually, they didn't suffer quite as much as some series suffer. If you liked Rambo, and then what was the second one? First Blood? Was that when he went to Afghanistan? Interesting that too. Like Clint Eastwood in The Outlaw Josie Wales, making political statement about violence not being the way, even though it's a violent movie. Rambo and Rambo First Blood, and at least those two that I can remember, were basically doing the same thing. Mickey's Ears, Goodfellas is a classic. Oh yeah. Yeah, Goodfellas really is the inspiration for The Sopranos, which won a lot of Emmys on HBO. And Joe Pesci and Robert De Niro, and I mean, you're not going to get better than that. That was a Martin Scorsese film too, who's a great director who's done all kinds of films, but he's really good at those mob movies. He and Francis Coppola. Let's see. Avengers and Close Encounters. Minority Report. I've always liked very, very much. There are a couple of other Spielberg films I've always liked that I've rewatched a whole bunch of times. AI, I've watched. That's very interesting. It's a futuristic Pinocchio story with this robot boy that wants to be a real boy. Minority Report, which came out right after 9/11. And it was, you start looking at these things, you can see how they're talking about something, but it's subtext to a fictional story. In Minority Report, some great scenes. There's a technology that will allow you to convict someone of a crime that they haven't committed yet. And of course, when that came out, that was a big comment on profiling people under the Homeland Security Act and taking them and waterboarding them and questioning them and stuff like that. And that was a lot. That was hard for me to not see through the veneer of that fictional story. But I think Tom Cruise is the star of that, and he goes and does what he has to do, and he's as cold and clinical as he can be, although he's mourning the death of a child, and he just throws himself into his work. But the scene where he actually sees this device work, where he has been named for a crime that he hasn't committed yet, and the shock and awe of what did I do and how do I find out what I'm going to do and how am I going to stop myself. That was a great, great scene. Mission Impossible is great. There are tons of great movies from Tom Cruise. That's correct. I agree. Mission Impossible movies I watch all the time. War of the Worlds, another Spielberg film, is really good. Does anybody remember? Let's see if I can. Tom Cruise movies. Okay, does anybody in the stream remember which? Okay, he's been in Eyes Wide Shut, The Firm, Top Gun, of course. The Last Samurai for Tom Cruise, A Few Good Men. I am looking. There's a movie that Tom Cruise made. Hey, you okay? My dog is dreaming. There's a movie Tom Cruise made. Okay, here's the quiz. It's in the future. He lives with this woman that he works with in this sort of a sky apartment. He goes out every day in this weird futuristic vehicles, and he basically is making sure that mining is going correctly because they are evacuating the planet Earth because of a disaster with some aliens, and there's quite a twist to that, but I can't remember. Tom Cruise, I'm going to put in Tom Cruise space movie. Cruise space film. Let's see how good Google looks at that. Tom Cruise space film. Video results. Oh no, okay. It says that Tom Cruise is going to be flying into space. Anyway, there's a great movie with Tom Cruise where he literally goes, that's a great movie, and it has a weird name, like Contact or something like that. It's a single word name. If you ever want to watch a movie that is really, really good, Tom Cruise. One word title film. All right, let's see what we get on Tom Cruise movie list. Hold on, guys. Still here. I'm looking on IMDb. Tom Cruise. Chaps, The Outsiders, All the Right Moves, Legend, Risky Business, of course, where he started, The Color of Money, Rain Man. Rain Man's a great movie if you've never seen that. Born on the 4th of July, Days of Thunder, A Few Good Men, The Firm, Interview with the Vampire. That was a very good movie. Like that movie. Jerry Maguire. Of course, Stanley Kubrick, Vanilla Sky, Minority Report, I just said, The Last Samurai, Collateral, War of the Worlds, Mission Impossible, Valkyrie, that was interesting. Tom Cruise was in a movie where they talked about a plot amongst German officers to get rid of Adolf Hitler. That didn't work. And I went through all of those films, and I didn't see the one film I'm looking for. Like it's hidden. Anyway, one day you guys are going to see it. I'm back. This is going to be a 15-hour stream. Have any of you guys... Oblivion, that's it! How did you get it? I'm searching all over. Have you, Mickey's ears? Have you seen Oblivion, or you just Googled it? And I'm going all over the place. Oblivion. Okay, great movie. The whole movie through. You got to wait for it. Starts a little bit slow. It doesn't take too long, but Oblivion, great movie. Totally not what you think is going on when you watch it, and actually, it's one of my... I could watch that movie many times over, and it's nothing... It seems like it's nothing spectacular. It's very subtle. I love that movie. It's weird how movies will hit you. Empire of the Sun. The Truman Show. Anybody out there think of The Truman Show? What is it? Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, or good night. The scene where Truman is on the so-called ocean in his limited world like a hamster, and he's gone all the way out to the edge against the advice of everybody who's trying to keep him in this secret TV show that is his life. And he literally gets to the end and bumps into it. It's a backdrop, a cyclorama painted like the sky, and there's a door. And also, although the guy who runs the show, his so-called God, has been trying to whip up storms and do all these things, he's just determined to get out there and see this woman who was sort of a protester and snuck in that he's been dreaming about seeing, and has opened him up to realizing that this is not really his life. And the way that scene goes, and how he goes out the door into the so-called real world. The Truman Show with Jim Carrey, 1998. Very, very cool. Blade Runner, I think I mentioned that before, which I did. When it came out in 1982, was a total flop. Harrison Ford, even though Harrison Ford was in the Star Wars movies, it did not do well. Neither did, I think it was Hamilton Street and Force 10 from Navarone. Movies that he really didn't have in the beginning there. Good luck until he hit Witness, I think. But anyway, it's a cult classic now, and they just spent a lot of money and made a lot of money doing a sequel to it with an older Harrison Ford in it. And that's a great... The opening of Blade Runner with the titles telling you about the future and how it opens up and what happens is amazing. The strange thing, of course, is that came out in 1982, and I think the date is like 2026 or something. So I don't think we're going to have come... It's like a lot of these future shows. I don't think we're going to have come that far, but it's an amazing opening. You could get on YouTube right now and watch that. La La Land... which I talked about. If you like La La Land, and which came out a few years ago, and you definitely want to see one of the movies on our classic list that we talked about just a little bit ago, which was Singing in the Rain from the 50s. La La Land came out in 2016. Same thing with that whole dance sequence, and really, it's like a lot of these musicals, like Grease, like Saturday Night Fever, any of these musical movies. If you like the movie, it's a whole ton of reasons. It's not just one scene. So La La Land is very much. I mean, the hilltop sunset dance is my favorite, but La La Land has a bunch of great scenes in it, just like Singing in the Rain and other musicals. Alien from 1979. The very end of Alien, after you think that Sigourney Weaver's character has gotten through all the dangerous and terrifying stuff she's gotten through, and she gets in the escape pod, and she gets out, and everything's quiet, and she's, starting to relax and get undressed and get ready to get into her sleep pod and everything, and it's all over, and she's, and then one of these closets bursts open, and the alien is there in the escape pod with her, and there's nowhere to go. The classic tagline for that was, "In space, no one can hear you scream." Everyone was screaming. I was screaming. Let's see. Forrest Gump. Gladiator. 2000's Gladiator. I remember that, how it made history come alive. And I remember one of the battle scenes in the middle of that movie, haven't watched it in a long time, where the main character, who had formerly been, a patrician of rank, a guy who was higher in the social order in Rome, is now all of a sudden a slave and fighting in the slave pits in the arena. How they showed it, how they showed what it would have been like if these arenas we only see the wreckage of were together again, how they had lions in there and chariots and everything. And there was one scene in there with the lions and chariots and everything where the blood that was being spilled, of course, the fake studio blood, hit the lens of the camera, as if you were right there getting splattered with blood yourself. And I saw it at the Cinerama Dome in Hollywood, California, which is this big, huge screen. So it wasn't like a little fleck, like if we were watching it on YouTube. It was like, it was like, ew. So Das Boot, 1981, another visceral movie that puts you right there. This movie puts you inside of the tiny confines. Being somebody who is a sailor in 2020, having to stay in a submarine, yeah, it's confined, and you have to not be, paranoid of small spaces and everything. But those World War II submarines were tiny. They were tiny. If you see all the stuff that goes on inside of a German submarine as they're being bombed and everything, that is very visceral as well. Memento, 2000. Very strange movie, but cool and very well done. The director of the Batman films with Christian Bale actually did this a little earlier in his career, and basically you have a man who's got a memory disorder, a long-term memory disorder, and people keep manipulating him because they know they can take advantage of him, because he's doing something with some people on one day, like say paying them or something, and then the next day he sees them and he doesn't know who they are, and he doesn't know that he paid them already. So they take advantage of him. So he basically starts using his body as a notepad, because he's afraid he's going to lose any lists or a notepad, and tattooing little notes all over himself, which leads him on this mystery. And Game, Citizen Kane, Godfather. Godfather Part 2, also very, very intense. There's a scene in there where Al Pacino is about to get into the mob world of his family. He's volunteered to basically, shoot one of these other mobsters. He's sitting in a restaurant with them, and he has a gun that somebody has planted in the back of a toilet tank in the restroom that's been duct taped there, and he has to go in the middle of all this tense stuff, pull that gun out and come in and shoot these guys. That is probably one of the most tense scenes that I've ever seen. And last but not least, I think I would throw in Chinatown and Fight Club. Chinatown is a classic, most perfect retellings and updatings of detective film noir, things like The Maltese Falcon and other Humphrey Bogart 1940s gumshoe detective movies would do, but in a 1970s fashion. And then last but not least, David Fincher's Fight Club from 1999, which the very ending of that film, when the protagonist basically finds out that he is a split personality, not just himself, but this guy, Tyler, who he thinks has been making him do things, it's really him. And he started this whole weird underground social movement. And the way that he actually gets to remember that is he threatens this other character, Tyler, with a gun, and then finds out that he shot himself, and he comes out of it. And he and his girlfriend watch as these bombs are going off all over the place, and all these buildings are falling down, like the beginning of a new social order. Very interesting. All right, so that was a really long stream, and I don't know why I went that long, but I did. 2 hours and 11 minutes. Thank you so much for joining me at the Live Places Movie Marathon. This is Bob at One Stop Mouse. If you're watching the replay, I hope you skipped around and enjoyed it. Please subscribe to One Stop Mouse. Please hit the subscribe icon. Would really appreciate that. Like this video, even if you just like a few parts because you couldn't stand it for 2 hours and 11 minutes. And hit the notification bell to stay informed. Come back and see us. We'll see you real soon. Why? Because we like you.